Hi, good afternoon. Thank you for attending Investing in the Future Growth Potential for AI Innovations, part of King's Festival for Artificial Intelligence 2025. The festival has been organized by the King's Institute for Artificial Intelligence. This is the third year it has brought a wide array of free events to both King's and external audiences to showcase the range of AI expertise across King's breadth. This year, there are over 45 separate events happening over 5 days this week between 20th to 24th of May. If you would like to find out more about the King's Institute for AI, please do go to www.kcl.ac.uk/AI or follow the Institute on social media. Quick housekeeping before we move on to the panel. As this is an online event, please ensure your microphone is muted. You're welcome to add your questions to the Q&A throughout the panel. We'll try our best to cover these as we go through. This event is also being hosted by King's Entrepreneurship Institute, the hub for all entrepreneurial activity at King's College London. Since launching in 2015, we've supported thousands of students, staff, and alumni to develop their entrepreneurial skills, ideas, ventures, and spinouts. Since 2016, our ventures have gone on to raise more than 107 million pounds in investment, more than 103 million in revenue, and have a survival rate that is twice the national average. My name is Dr. Yotam Levy, and I will be moderating today's panel. I lead investor relations at the Entrepreneurship Institute at King's, supporting the King's Startup Accelerators, portfolio companies, and the spin-out companies coming out of King's. I'm honest myself for both my undergraduate and PhD, and have previously taught physiology at King's, having joined the Entrepreneurship Institute almost 4 years ago. So please allow me to introduce the great panelists joining us this afternoon. Ofer Shayo is the Managing Director of Intel Ignite, the AI and Deep Tech Hub he founded in 2025. He previously headed Intel Ignite's UK program and was part of the global team that selected and accelerated 216 deep tech startups whose portfolio has raised over $3.5 billion. Prior to that, Ofer co-founded cloud TV pioneer TVinci, which was acquired by Kaltura. And at King's, we know Kaltura very well because we use it. An entrepreneur, investor, and mentor, Ofer holds an LLB in law and government from Reichman University. Hello, Ofer. Claire Zhang is also joining us today. Claire is an associate at Playfair Capital, a generalist pre-seed fund investing across Europe with high conviction at the earliest stages. Before joining the world of venture capital, Claire was an operator working for both large-scale tech companies like Uber and as a founder's associate at seed stage fintech startup. At Playfair, Claire runs the Female Founders Office Hours initiative, which you might.
You're muted, Yotam.
We lost you.
Oh, okay. I'll read the last bit again. At Playfair, Claire runs the Female Founders Office Hours initiative, the largest DEI initiative in Europe, which you might have seen, and is extremely passionate about all things health. Hi, Claire. Gregory Verghese is the co-founder and CTO of PharosAI, an AI-driven precision medicine startup on the King Spinout Accelerator. PharosAI was recently awarded 18.9 million pounds by the UK Department for Science, Innovation and Technology to advance secure healthcare data access for research. Greg is also an early career researcher and machine learning scientist at King's and Guy's Cancer Center, where his work focuses on developing AI models to improve breast cancer prognosis and treatment prediction. Hi, Greg. And last but not least, Sundar Arvind is the CEO and co-founder of a venture-backed stealth mode startup building in the AI music space. Previously, Sundar was the CEO and co-founder of Blitzo, a startup on the King Startup Accelerator, where he drove the company to 1.3 million pounds in annual recurring revenue just 10 months after launch. Sundar studied computer science, artificial intelligence, and management at King's, and before turning to tech, he was a professional junior tennis player, ranking in the UK's top 3 in both the under 12 and under 14 age groups. Thank you all for joining us. So I thought I thought maybe what we could do is start with you, Claire. Which sectors do you see that are receiving a lot of investment in the UK right now? Is AI one of them? Deep tech? What do you see?
It's a great question, and I think it's kind of funny because ever since AI rise, I don't think there's a single industry that's not receiving a lot of investment right now. I think AI has really changed the landscape of funding and kind of what actually can be built. Because that we're actually seeing investments become more and more diversified. And I think investors also being willing to take bets in areas that haven't traditionally been invested in before. So I think deep tech is a great example of this, where in the past, a lot of investors have thought the kind of the capital needs and the fundraising structure doesn't really work for venture. And now it's just a rising industry that's quite frankly pretty unstoppable at the moment. So to be honest, there's a lot of things, but the UK definitely specializes in a few areas such as bio and health. So there's never ending amount of places to be investing.
Thanks. Ofer, is this something that you're noticing now in deep tech?
Yeah, absolutely. Just to correct, I'm not managing director of Intel Ignite. I used to be managing director
Ignite
of Intel
London.
Ignite, and now, yeah, it's confusing. We are independent, operating in King's Cross and building founders and investors community here in King's Cross. And I'm happy to connect with anyone that is interested to learn more. What we are seeing recently, I think in the last 3 years since I joined the deep tech scene here in London. So we are seeing recently a lot of AI agentic companies. They are getting a lot of investments, but we are seeing now more and more companies operating around similar fields. So it's going to be very busy area, but I do believe there are endless amount of opportunities there. In terms of deep tech, we see shift of a lot of VCs that are used to invest in B2B enterprise SaaS, moving towards deep tech for one single reason. They want to invest in companies that their investment will be more long-term sustainable and will be hard to copy or so they want to see deep tech and proper IP in the companies they are investing in. And we also see some shift towards it's also kind of a subset of deep tech, also some shift to defense. I'm sure you noticed there are many new VCs in defense tech, which comes because there is demand in the market and more supply of startups operating under this dual use, which means many startups that never planned to become defense companies, but there is some use cases of defense, and in terms of go-to-market, sometimes it makes sense for them. So this is another trend I see in the market recently.
Thanks. So this is actually an interesting thing that we're seeing with the accelerator as well. We're seeing opportunistic move towards different sectors just because of where the funding is shifted to. I guess this is a question to all of you. Is this something that you recommend companies do, go to where the money is, or should they stick to their own sector and their own plan and stay there? And I know it's a slightly simplistic question on purpose. So what's your opinion on that? Sundar, how about you go first?
Yeah, of course. I think we kind of did this, so I would say yes, do it. I think ultimately you do need to be passionate about the space you're in, and you need to be able to do that for the next 20 years. And it should be the only thing you want to do for the next 20 years as well. But that being said, if you want to go do something as bad as last mile logistics, like we ended up doing, you're probably not going to receive a lot of support that you need to really build for the next 20 years. So I think it's a fine balance between choosing your passion, but also going where the money is. especially if you're in your probably early 20s like me, where you really need all the support you can gather to kind of build and fuel that rocket that you're trying to build. So yeah, I think it's a fine line, but go where your passion is probably, and try to align that with where the money is going. Yeah.
Greg, would you like to share something?
Yeah, I think it's yeah, as you said, it's a fine line, right? I might disagree slightly. I think following the money can be problematic. I think ultimately you should find a problem, right, that you think is a problem that needs to be solved. I think particularly think if you follow the money, then everyone else is following the money, right? And so you're going into a market which is undifferentiated. Ultimately, you do need investment and you need funding when you're early stage. But I think at the moment we have so many tools available to us, all of the AI tools to be able to build applications, right? You don't need to be a programmer anymore. Funding at an early stage is less important to get a prototype off the ground. So I think from my point of view, find a problem that you're passionate about and it's a real world problem that needs solving, and you will find the funding will follow.
Yeah, thanks. Ofer?
Yeah, I may add. So yeah, I agree that you must make sure that you understand well the problem, and you understand the problem because you either experience it by yourself, you're passionate about solving this problem. We spoke with many people that potentially will become your customers, and you really fully analyze this problem, and you are convinced that there is a problem. What I'm seeing many times that people are fall in love in the solution, but there is no problem, or the problem is not painful enough. So this is the one important insight. And another one, and I think something that investors are really looking at it, is the team. And I'm seeing here, and by the way, this is something that I'm seeing more in London rather than in the US or Israel, where I'm coming from, and I have some comparable into the market. I see more teams that are coming together after they met each other for a few weeks, few months, and it's super risky. Getting into this journey without getting to know deeply the other founding team, it's a huge risk. It's a tough journey. You want to make sure that, like in every partnership, you're picking up the right partners. You feel comfortable with them when it's hard, because the majority of this journey is going to be hard. So this is another thing that investors they want to make sure that there is a good synergy at the team. On the personal level.
Thanks.
I can just jump in just to build on that point. So I think the team thing is really important, right? So I think having a team that's got deep expertise is important, but I think also, as you said, the team dynamic. So something that we've been asked every time we've been on a call with an investor is how long have we worked together as a team? Because ultimately the success is going to be down to the relationships you have as founders. And so, yeah, I think team's absolutely fundamental. Having obviously previous founders in your team is going to be a massive benefit as well. But I think working with people that align with you on principles and values is really important, right? So it's problem, but also team, I think, which is fundamental.
We see sometimes, cases on the accelerator where you see how an idea is great and investors also like the idea and everything seems fine, but the founders just don't really have an open line of communication. And you see how sometimes, sadly, it brings the business down just because of that, something that seems on its surface very simple, but it's not simple at all. So I think maybe following on that point, Claire, what are some of the common problems that you see with AI startup companies? Is AI something that has become so quick that founders can just meet in a pub now and start an AI business tomorrow morning, or how do you see it?
It's a great question. I think the way we like to think about AI at the moment is it's basically what the internet was, 20, 25 years ago. It's going to be so incorporated into everything we do and everything we build. And we're already seeing this actually just even at the pace of building products now. It's becoming faster and faster for any team to go out, have an idea, and then have a prototype, even within days, to be honest. So the rate at which companies are growing and evolving is changing so quickly. But that also means that the increasing rise in competition in any area that you could be building in is growing. And that means that kind of how quickly the needs of each sector and industry are evolving are also changing really quickly. So I think something that we think is quite dangerous for a lot of companies in AI is thinking that building an AI or having that as your tool is going to be defensible. It's not. At this point, AI should be enabling you, like Gregory said earlier, to find that problem, like to solve that problem. And it shouldn't kind of be the core. It should be like the tool you're using to get there. But at the end of the day, thinking that just because you're using AI, somebody's going to want to adopt it isn't enough. It has to actually truly be like enabling you to build defensibility in some other way.
So I guess you're touching on something that I also wanted to ask you. So what are many people from our audience actually wanted to know this. What are some of the metrics that that investors use to predict the success of an AI company, whatever that may be? Is there anything special that you're looking for in those companies?
It's a great question. And technically, as a pre-seed investor, I can't say that there's anything in specific that we're looking for, just because sometimes we invest in companies with crazy traction and sometimes we invest in companies that are pre-product. So the range of what we're looking for really depends. But I think that we've pointed to a few things. I think the whole panel has actually talked about, team and their experience and their knowledge of how deep this industry is extremely important, and kind of their obsession to solving that problem, not necessarily building the solution, but solving the problem is absolutely crucial. But on the flip side, we do like to see, traction's a hard word to say, but some sort of metric to show like engagement or just customer obsession as well. It doesn't even necessarily have to be paid, or, it can just be like you have these customers who have signed up and used the platform every single day since they've done it. I think anything that shows like a continuous return from your customers and like you being able to embed yourselves within their workflows really quickly, or their life, or kind of however you're applying the AI, that's extremely important to us. But I do have to say at the early stage, it's extremely difficult because we have some companies we've invested in that are, a year in and pivoting now. So being able to define what's going to make a successful AI company is basically what every investor is asking themselves.
And I guess one, so maybe one for Ofer. You're looking at companies to join an accelerator, which will and then those companies will hopefully go on and raise funding. So from your perspective, what are some of the metrics that you view when deciding who to take on the accelerator?
So in addition to, we're trying to see first that people are coachable, because people that are joining a program, we want to see that they really want to listen, not to us, to all the mentors, the ecosystem, the people that they will meet. In addition, we want to make sure that they understand the big picture on where they are operating, because they will probably need to pivot or to move a little bit right or left with what they think that they are going to do. And I can give an example of just a conversation I had yesterday with a founder that I really like and appreciate. So that they're building agentic AI for the area of e-commerce and payments. We spoke about all this layer between like the new, we call it in our conversation like the new generation of HTML, because we will have agentic AI that will need to navigate the internet, and they don't need the same UI as humans. And we discussed about that, and he told me maybe we'll open the eyes also on this stack, and we might operate not only for payments and e-commerce, and we will try to see if we can build something even bigger on this stack. And then later on, I've seen that Microsoft came up yesterday with an announcement that they're building and doubling down on this layer of next generation HTML. They gave it a name, I don't remember. And I was impressed by, on one hand, their ability to focus, and they know, I will not say exactly what they're building now, but they know exactly where they want to, what they want to achieve, but they understand the bigger picture and the bigger opportunity, and things will change. And I'm sure also for them, things will change, and Microsoft and Stripe and many other giants will come with several solutions. And I feel comfortable that they will navigate very fast and will move and swap ideas in order to get into a product market fit. So I want to see these muscles at the beginning.
So as we know and as we discussed, AI has a lot of potential good that it can do, but sadly there are many other factors that we need to take into account that could be harmful for people or certain groups in society, etc. So when you're thinking about what founders are building, or when you're building a solution yourself, what are some of the ethics that you consider or that you implement into your process or into your product? I guess, Greg, we could start with you. What's your approach to ethics in this case? Muted.
Yeah, so I think it's a good question. I think in the healthcare space, obviously this is like massively relevant because AI has the potential to do huge good, right? Because we're seeing, new therapeutics, drug discovery, early prevention, diagnostics. So I think there's a potential to revolutionize healthcare. But one of the problems we've seen technically is some of the underlying biases that you can kind of bake into the training of your models, right? And that really comes from the data sets that you curate. So a lot of those biases are just natural, real world sort of biases that we have in society. And so making sure you're very careful and considerate on validating your technology across different patient cohorts is going to be really important. We've seen, so I work in pathology, in cancer. We see that often a lot of these models perform very highly on certain patient groups. And then when you take that same model and you apply it to a different cohort, you just see it massively degrades in performance because that histology from that particular demographic just isn't represented. So I think it's going to be a real problem and consideration that we need to kind of bake into the development process. And I think regulation is going to be really important here, right? So, the EU AI Act was the first kind of framework of its kind, and hopefully there'll be more to follow. And I think the regulators really need to steer AI developers in making sure that we build ethical AI. I think one other big problem which kind of relates to ethics is really about explainability and transparency. So models at the moment are, they're black boxes. I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done to build and develop tools that can actually explain their decision-making process. And this is a very active research area. So I think we'll see a lot of innovation in this space in the next couple of years.
Thanks. Sundar, how do you bake this into your solutions?
Yeah, absolutely. I think when we think of ethics, it has to come down to the intentions of the founders first. So if your intention is to, let's say in the space we are, which is AI music, if your intention is to replace art, then you probably will train all your models on Spotify's corpus of data, and it'll probably replace the artist because there's so much data on every artist that you could potentially write a song very similar to your favorite artist. But I think when it boils down to what ethics really are for us, it's more the vision, which is you don't really want to replace the artist. You want to 10x the artist. You want to help that artist produce more music. You want to use their creativity and kind of extrapolate and help them complete their music faster. So when you have a vision to be a companion rather than a replacement, and when your vision is to 10x anyone from a software engineer, which is what Cursor is doing, to what we're doing to a producer, then that kind of breaks down the ethics as well, which is how do we train our models so they generalize and have a reasoning layer, which is can you produce like this artist? Sure. This artist thinks this way. I'm going to try to do this. But also, the training data that we use is none of their music. It's more we partner with the artists themselves and say, hey, how do you actually think of writing a song? What's the process you go through? And then we extract this reasoning and then we bake that into the models rather than training it on the corpus of all the music they've produced in the past. So I think ethics really boils down to what you want to do. If you have good intention, you probably will train your models and have less bias. There's like this age-old saying in AI where a lot of the bias depends on the developer and kind of what they feed into the model. The model is ultimately just mathematical in the end of the day. So anything you feed in is what you're going to get. So if your intention is good, then yeah, you probably got the ethics sorted from the beginning.
Thanks, Claire. What do you see? What do you look for as an investor? What do you see that founders do?
That's a good question. I mean, obviously, as generalists, we look at like every single industry out there and what ethics means in every industry, or what the impact of any technology on any industry can be is completely vast. So I actually think one of the main things that we look for here is we have to be the ones to actually figure out what the ethical problems could be facing any company, and then we will actually want to see that the founder has already thought of that and has thought about that in terms of the way that they're building their models and the way that they're actually distributing their products, and thinking forward long term as well in terms of how they're willing to adjust and pivot if they need to in order to account that in. So I think for us as investors, the most important thing to see is not only has the founder thought about the ethical implications, but also that they've got a solution or they're kind of thinking about how to incorporate that into what they're building. So I think that's really important. And back to what Sundar was saying, this is actually why what you're building, like what problem you're solving, is so unbelievably important at the end of the day, because we always think if you're able to reach whatever your 10-year vision is for the company, what does that actually mean for the industry you're building in? What does the trickle down effect look like? And if you're solving an inherently really big problem, I think that's really, really crucial to being able to think about the ethics behind everything. But if you're just building AI to build AI or building a product for the love of solution, normally those are the times when we see that the founders haven't actually thought about the ethical side.
Yeah, thanks. Offers do you have anything to add to that? You probably do.
I just want to echo something that Gregory, he wrote in the chat, if anyone missed that. First, well done for being able to write in the chat and listen and allocate your attention so well. So yeah, I think it says a lot about the culture of the startup, and you can learn a lot about the way that the founders are thinking about solving problems, the type of people they want to hire, and the values they want to have in the company. So the ethic of the AI side is just one slice of the entire culture, vision, the way that people are, those founders will approach problems when they will come. So I think it's an important topic to look at and to discuss on early days.
Thanks. And an interesting question, which is probably again something that I think advancing, like constantly new companies come up, new AI models are coming up. How do you stay current in this market?
Great question. I wish I had an answer.
I should add, apart from staying in the office 24/7, which I always see you there.
Yes, I think that's a prerequisite. But yeah, I think I don't think I have like a straight answer. I think first, stay at the bleeding edge, regardless of how you want to do that. One is run your own company at the bleeding edge if you have what it takes to really pull it off. Otherwise, join a startup that's at the cutting edge and be there as one of the early employees. And then you've all heard of the PayPal mafia, I'm sure, and all these other mafias, and they kind of just spin out from there, and they kind of know what's missing and in the kind of latest revolutions, and that's one way to do it. So how do you stay on top of it? I think you have to be in it daily, in some way or the other. So if you're probably working a full-time job elsewhere, maybe watch some podcasts. I think that's one way we do it internally. So I make sure the team is watching the same podcast that I am always. Some good ones would be 20VC. Harry Stubbings does a great job with interviewing some of the best AI folks. And then there's a lot of other ones. So Anthropic, that the provider that builds Claude, they release a couple of things as well. And then Sequoia also occasionally hosts, the OpenAI folks and so on. So I think there's a lot of good podcasts out there that pretty short, 20-30 minutes, and you're probably caught up on what's going on in the world. But yeah, I think actively trying to be involved, either being at the forefront yourself or joining a startup that's kind of at the forefront, should be enough.
Thanks. Feel free to come in and offer some more advice.
I think that everyone, not only founders, not only employees in a startup, today need to allocate time to learn about AI and how to become more efficient. So you should be more efficient as an organization. You need to make sure what you are building is relevant and no one else is building or already built it, because things are really evolving and changing all the time. But I agree, listen to podcasts, speak with other peers. One of the things that I'm encouraging founders to do that are joining us at Ignite London or in my network and community is always to speak to other founders, to learn from each other. This peer-to-peer is super important, to understand how people are solving similar problems. So on top of the product that you're building, there is a whole stack of operation and that you need to have. So everyone needs, or not everyone, but every startup needs in some sort to have like a marketing machine, a sales machine, adding AI into these processes and make it 10x more efficient is something you need to do on top of on the fact that you're building something. So yeah, always make sure that you are on top of things and as efficient as or more efficient than your competition.
Yeah, I can just add. So I think we've probably had some experience with this at Pharos. So I think it's really difficult, right? In the world of AI, it's moving so quickly that there's new tech every day. When we started Pharos probably over a year ago now, our whole pitch was around foundation models. And a year later, everyone's talking about agent-based AI. So it's difficult to stay competitive when you're focusing just on the technology. So I think, and we've already mentioned this before, I think at the core of it is like if you're solving a real problem, if the problem is something which needs to be solved, then it almost doesn't matter what the technology is, and you can pivot and you can be flexible and be modular. I also think build a strong product that kind of outside of the tech, right? So if you have a really great product which is user-friendly, very easy to use, that is going to get wide adoption, then again, you can be modular to whatever that AI or that underlying technology in the back end is. And so I think, problem, product, and getting your distribution solved is sometimes much more important than building tech for the sake of tech, which I think Claire mentioned earlier.
Yeah, and I think just to follow on that point, like the being flexible thing, I think is almost more important than being able to be current. Like at any point, anything could come to any company and completely derail what they're building. So I think actually just being able to roll with the punches, and if you layer that on top of being genuinely curious, and when you hear about a new innovation or on this panel you hear like words being thrown around, going out and actually figuring out what those are, what that means. I think just constantly asking questions of your users, of your team, other founders, anyone you meet in the industry, you'll actually be able to, add that with being flexible, and you'll be able to be ahead of everybody, or at least stay relevant basically until any given point in time in the future.
Yeah, makes sense. And I'm curious, we're talking a lot about startups, and some of the issues that we're seeing right now are actually not in startups that can adopt solutions very quickly. When you look at very big organizations, how do you go about implementing AI solutions there? If we take one of I think the good examples, Claire, you said that you're passionate about all things health. In your industry, dealing with an organization as big as and complex as the NHS, how do you see companies trying to implement their solutions there?
If I'm being honest, it's not about using the word AI at all, and it comes back to, I mean, we've emphasized this point quite a lot, but I can't even, like, the amount of times I'll have to drill it home. It's about the problem. I think you really have to actually, the industries where you have incumbents who are old school, slow moving, not willing to adopt new technologies. That's actually where knowing your customer is more important than any other industry, because you have to understand inside and out what makes them tick, what makes them, change their habits so that they're willing to test something out. And actually, what can you do to make yourself so crucial to their workflow that once they've tested you or once they hear about what you can do for them, they actually can't go back to their old ways because they've seen how much progress they've made. So I think in that case, actually understanding the problem in the user is unbelievably important. And AI just enables you to actually solve that better for them. They don't really care if it's AI or not, to be honest. They just care about the results. So I think it's really about actually, like, the sale, the pitch is more important than anything else. And, really knowing the customer.
Yeah, makes sense. Ofer, can you echo that?
I can't agree more. And I think that you need to take into consideration that those large organizations, they need to take into account compliancy and security and endless amount of policies. They're always, by adopting new technologies, they are taking a risk of data leakage and reputation and, like, endless amount of reasons why not. Okay, so your pitch should be very strong, and the problem should be so painful to make them take this risk and work very hard to implement something new and adopt your product or your solution. And this is why it's important to speak with those potential buyers as early as possible, to make sure you work backwards from what they tell you and keep it fresh. Like, don't speak with customers now, go and build for 2 years and then come back to the market with a solution. The cycles are much shorter. I don't know, up to a quarter. I think you cannot predict anything more than 3 months ahead. So keep and revalidate everything that you've been told by your potential customers a few times on the way until they're ready to buy.
Yeah, sorry, Greg, go on.
I was just going to add, so just to pick up on your NHS example. So the NHS is super bad at clinical adoption of AI, right? In some sense, there needs to be systemic change, I think, that comes from an organizational level. But I think one of the problems we've seen, and I see this from the research side as well with clinical AI, is that about 70% of AI tools for healthcare don't involve the clinician. There's no code development whatsoever. And so, it's a data scientist building something which is technically very impressive, but clinically useless. So I think it's absolutely core, and it's not just for healthcare, but for any sort of application in any industry, that you really involve the end user in your development process from day one, right? And in healthcare, that's so important because the question is, are you really answering a really important clinical decision point? Are you using the right inputs, the right outputs? How does it compare to the status quo? Like, all of these things need to be thought about, and they come from the domain expert, not the AI developer.
There are many companies that I've spoken with on our accelerators in the past, and one of the first things they all say as their biggest mistake is that they should have started selling earlier. And it's not because it could have turned them revenue generating earlier. It's because they were basically building everything by themselves until they felt ready to expose it to the end user by that point, too late. They built without any feedback, no validation. It just didn't work. And in some extreme cases, they had to basically bin it and start from scratch with validation this time. Yeah, I guess in the things that you build, especially with big organizations like the NHS, you might not have the opportunity to rebuild. So, yeah. I think one of the interesting things that I noticed even trying to organize this panel, but I can also say that that's something I saw on our accelerator too, is that it seems like there are hardly any women in AI. We don't see them very much. I'm sure they exist. Claire, you're here with us, but we don't see that very often. So, Claire, this one is definitely a question for you, also partly because you're leading the office hours that I mentioned earlier. So how about tell us something about the office hours and why you decided to do that and how you feel that it's helping women in our industry?
Yeah, always love an opportunity to talk about it.
Maybe I should add how you stop people from trying to become tech bros and and actually stay who they are, right? And excel at that.
It's a great question. So for everyone who doesn't know, Female Founder Office Hours, it's an initiative that we run twice a year, and it connects basically anyone who's a female founder building in tech pre-Series A in Europe with 6 investors over the course of 3 hours. And the idea is basically just no warm intros needed, geography, not really a barrier, and just actually getting you directly in front of an investor. And the reason we did this is because the statistic of 2% of funding going to women founders, it's astounding. There's many more female founders in the industry than that. The discrepancies between how much funding they actually receive is pretty astounding. That being said, it's actually really interesting to see the applications we get for the initiative, because overwhelmingly, majority of these companies founded by women are actually consumer facing. That's something that we've seen as a really big problem, because on the flip side, the majority of the investors who attend or just exist in the industry care about B2B businesses. So there is already a discrepancy there. And I think that's even more why we care so much about trying to educate. And so enabling women to get into more programs where they're more STEM focused, or, doing things that they traditionally would be out of their comfort zone or a very male dominant industry. So I think that's actually where the majority of the focus for what we want the next phase of the initiative to look like, but also just the next wave of women within STEM tech to look like. But that being said, like you pointed out, there are plenty who are trying to move towards this AI wave. And to be honest, I don't really think it's necessary for what they're building if it's consumer facing. But there's so many that are just absolutely obsessed with the problem that they've encountered. They want to build a solution for because they're the end customer. And it's a really great actually to see that despite everything happening and the rapid changes in tech, there's so many people and founders who are staying abstinent and want to build what they're going to build. So it's definitely, it's really difficult, but I think it is progressing really at a good speed. We're seeing so many more founders building in AI. So I think it's going to change. It's just a slow process.
And I see a question in the chat, and I'll direct that to all of you. While it's great to hear Claire's efforts for women's position in industry, I would be interested to hear how the men manage male behavior and culture and champion women. I guess that's a criticism for me, rather than asking the only woman in the room to answer around male behavior. So any one of you would like to take it, please go for it. Offer.
So for me personally, it's an important topic. For me, it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. I cannot tell you what I'm doing like X, Y, and Z to change it. I think that I welcome everyone in the panel, at the audience, and influence others in your network. Always to make sure that you have diversity in your team, that every meeting that you're participating, you're making sure there is the diversity of voices. We at Intel Ignite, it was a deep tech accelerator, and it was even more challenging to have female founders, but we made sure that we will have minimum, like as a statement, we said we will not open a court if we don't have 20%. We aim to 50%, but the reality was that at least 20%, we achieved 30% female founders at the team. And it was the case for every panel, all the speakers teams, we managed to have 50% female representation. So it's about creating safe environment for female, and there is no playbook. It should be mindset and something that every leader, every person should think about that all the time. Otherwise, it's really hard to manage this type of shift and change. So just call out for everyone to support that and think about that.
Greg, how do you manage in your team?
Yeah, I think it's a really important thing, right? And having a wife who is a female founder, I've seen the struggles that she's gone through. You know, she founded a company back in 2016, and I think, you know, there have been challenges that she's faced from an investment perspective that maybe her male counterparts haven't. I think it goes back to what we were discussing with sort of ethics and culture, right? And being really intentioned about the culture that you set in your company. And it has to come from the top and be all the way through the organization. So making sure that you are intentional in your hiring and being representative. And I think building, I guess, a robust company that sets those standards from the top, from the founders. So I'm very fortunate that I've got 3 female co-founders. Our CEO is a founder. But I think it's for everyone to think about at every level of the company, no matter what kind of stage or how long you've been in that organization.
Thanks. And I guess so. We one of the things we were talking about is that a lot of the investment is really reliant on the founder market fit, on the team, etc. So you know, we have a very we were talking about diversity. We have a diverse group here in the sense that we have founders, operators, ex-operators, accelerators, investors. We have a big chunk of the ecosystem right here with us. So I'm interested in your view on top tips for individuals preparing to fundraise, companies looking to fundraise at pre-seed, I should add. How can they show their greatness to investors? And you might have contrasting opinions sitting on both sides of the fence. I don't know, but if you do, feel free to state them.
Sure, I can start. I think what's worked for us first was, like we spoke about this earlier, which is like the founder market fit. You have to be in it for the next 10, 20 years, and the whole team has to be in it, because the product could change, the business model could change, you could pivot. But one thing that probably stays the same is the founding team. And a lot of the good checks that we've had have come from people that have believed in the team. And when we pivoted from logistics to music AI, which is quite a wild pivot, no one said no. Some of the best investors like Ivor, you know, I messaged them on WhatsApp and they're absolutely okay with it. So I think it goes back to having a great team. That's what's worked for us. So in the early days, I think it's worth selling your team and yourself a lot more than selling the business in itself, because a lot of things are going to change. But the one constant is probably the team. So that's something that's worked for us. So as soon as we moved away from trying to prepare a typical, hey, here's our ARR, here's our this, here's our that, I think we started opening with, hey, I played tennis growing up, you know, and that really changed the whole dynamic of the race in a lot of ways. And yeah, we continue to stick to it, where try and sell the team as much as we can before we even get into what's the product, or you know, what's the market size. So yeah, we automatically, we love the folks that say, you know, who's in the team before how big is the market. So that's kind of our perspective.
Thanks. Greg, Ofer, Claire?
Yoram, could you repeat the question? So I got distracted by a screaming baby.
Yes, no problem. The question was at pre-seed, a lot of the investment is reliant on the founder. So what are your tips for people looking to fundraise? How can they show their greatness?
I think building a prototype is probably something that everyone can do around, right? Like you don't need so pre-seed, you don't have any revenue, you don't have any funding. But there are a lot of AI applications now where you can quickly build something that might be quite hacky and you can get some validation from your end user. So I think building some sort of prototype or MVP and demonstrating that the product that you're building works and that users want to use it is something that think will go a long way. I think the other thing is just be obsessed about the thing that you're trying to solve and the problem, right? And if you're obsessed with something, that will come off and that will show to the investor. And it comes back to the thing about choosing a problem which needs to be solved. So if you choose a problem that you're passionate about, again, I think the investor will, likely invest in you rather than the thing or the product at that stage.
Claire, when you speak with founders pitching their ideas, can you see who's pitching because this is the smart thing to do, or who's pitching because they're really passionate about it?
1000%. It is unbelievably clear, even just from like the first word you say, the energy you give off. We can all tell exactly like if you're really obsessed. So I think, to both Sundar and Gregory's point, being like selling yourself and just like actually truly caring about what you're building and putting your best foot forward is the most important thing. But I mean, part of that is storytelling. I think really understanding like how you can sell yourself and why you're building what you're building is so important. And then the flip side of that is there's no such thing as being over prepared, in my opinion. So like I would always say, if you're building and going out to raise a pre-seed, try to do the work that an investor would do, like basically bottom out every single aspect of your industry, your product, what the go-to-market would look like, what 5 years down the line the fundraise horizon would look like, who would do the next rounds, who your actual customer is. Know the answer to all of that, and that's part of actually being obsessed with the problem and being obsessed with your customer. That will come naturally if you genuinely are, because you want to know all those things. But being able to have all those questions, the answers to all those questions ready to go the minute an investor asks you, actually partially comes off showing how good the team is and also how problem obsessed you are. So there's no such thing as being over prepared, and like anything, any resource, any information that you can gather, like put it somewhere and have it ready to be shipped out.
Yeah, makes sense. Ofer?
Yeah, it's I can't agree more with everyone, and I think team is the most important thing. But in addition, you should pitch why now. What has been changed? Why there is an opportunity now that we didn't have 18 months or 24 months ago, and why this is the right team to win, because probably these investors heard earlier today or last week similar or almost similar pitch from other teams. You need to convince them why you are the right team to win. So focus on that as well.
Yeah, thanks. So I know that, Greg, you need to leave soon. So one final question, and I'll start with Greg. What can universities like King's do to better engage more of its university talent in AI sector? Do you see that more going into edtech solutions, or do you think that there's a whole variety of things that universities can do to do that?
Yeah, I mean,
I got you there.
I think one thing which is really important is embedding entrepreneurship at every level of the university, right? And I think Kings have done an amazing job at that. I mean, I wouldn't have started Faros if it wasn't for the EI Institute and all the support that you've given me. So I think having a very forward-thinking university, which isn't just thinking purely about research for the sake of research, which is obviously very important, but is commercially minded, is embeds that at every level of education, whether it's undergraduate or master's degree. I think embracing AI technologies. I know that obviously there are concerns around, for example, ChatGPT and plagiarism, but I think we need to find a way to adapt in how we educate and how we use these tools to kind of harness all of the benefits that they give, right? And so I think it's important that we just use AI tooling in education, and that shouldn't start just at university. That should also be at school level, right? When programming came around, we started teaching young children how to program at primary school, and I think going forward, we're going to have to look at a similar model with, making AI tools part of the curriculum.
Yeah, I used to play with computer hardware when I was about 8, 9, just because it was available. It was there, and because of that, why not? Right? Ofer, Claire, Greg, you should feel free to leave if you need to.
Great. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks. Ofer?
Claire, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I have a very pointed opinion about this, and it's always, I think every single university should be encouraging students to get exposure with startups, join one, get an internship, shadow, whatever it is. I think that's always the most important way. And I think a lot of universities, obviously it kind of varies by what area the university is in and what students are studying. But I think there's a lot of encouragement quite often to go for companies that'll pay more, or, areas where they'll be focused in academia, and, we need those for sure. But I think completely underestimated for someone young, hustly, and with energy and passion to go into a space where everyone they're going to be around is going to match their energy, and actually getting them from the very early stages exposed to that, I think is so unbelievably important. And to be honest, it's really good for the startup ecosystem as well, just because we always need more young people, talent, people who are willing to join the industry and basically fuel innovation. So I think anything that Kings and the like can do to just get students exposed and in there as early as possible is the most important thing.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, from my side, I think these type of events are super important, and to connect the students with the industry, and to encourage people to build something, and to try to do some entrepreneurship journey while they are students. It's today the bar is not very high. We mentioned that you can build something. I've done a workshop with A-level students like 2 weeks ago, and encouraged them to build something in Lovable in 1 hour, and they build things for their communities, and part of them went farther and experiment that. So to encourage the students to build, to try something, to fail, I think it's something that must go alongside with the academia in the world that we are stepping into. Everyone should have some entrepreneurship experience and mindset.
Definitely. Thanks. And Sundar, a quick one, because we nearly need to finish.
Yeah, absolutely agree with everyone. So, I mean, I wouldn't be here if not for the King's Accelerator. So, yeah, I think all universities kind of having that competitive, getting the best startups into an accelerator for 6 months, 1 year, whatever that duration is, it really builds you, from that student to being put in the world by yourself is quite hard. So having that kind of 20 other people with you, built on the same journey in different kind of industries, having the best kind of ecosystem around, your time is super helpful with fundraising and a lot of other things. And there's a lot of other people in the also to enabling more student-led startups.
Thank you. So this is the end of our panel. Just a number of quick things just before we go. If you enjoyed this event today, join our entrepreneurial community at King's by following on our socials or subscribing to our newsletter. And please take a moment to scan this QR code and answer one question to help us with our evaluation of the festival. This is also a reminder that the festival runs until Saturday, the 24th, end of this week. And there are lots and lots of other events in the program. You can find out more by registry and register by following this QR code on the screen. So I'll give you 1 second extra to scan the code if you haven't already. And thank you very much for the speakers for joining us today and for sharing your thoughts. And thank you, the audience, for joining in our conversation. I hope you have found it insightful and valuable. So thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful day.